and welcome to Hotline 21. This is a live interactive show brought to you by CAN TV and Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. I will be your host this evening, and my name is Vaishu. I am a counselor advocate from one of our programs, Greenhouse Shelter, and my guest for this evening is Atsimba Rodriguez, who is currently it's a counselor advocate at the HCIP program. So for the next 20 minutes, we will be talking with Atsimba about the topics of domestic violence and different programs at CAWC. Our phone lines are open, so please feel free to call us, and we will be more than happy to answer any of your questions and concerns. So, Atsi, CAWC has a long history of working with ending domestic violence. Can you tell me what you do?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me here with you, Vaishu. I work at one of our satellite programs in Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and what we basically do is we receive referrals from the staff at the hospital. So when a client comes in and they come to any part of the hospital emergency, so they just come from a checkup, they are screened for different things. And if they answer a question where it's like, I don't feel safe going back home, or they're experiencing any type of domestic violence, the staff will refer them to us, and then we go to wherever they are in the hospital, or we call them, depending on the situation, and then we tell them what services we provide, which is counseling, as you mentioned before, counseling and advocacy, okay? So from there, we basically talk to the client and we let them know the different services that we provide at the hospital and outside the hospital, and we go from there.
That's perfect. So could you tell us a little bit more about how someone could have access to your services?
Right. Yeah.
And also the process when someone calls your program from, just like from the beginning to if someone had to call you asking you for assistance, what is the first thing that you would do if they had no referral?
Okay, so for the most part, like I said, we receive referrals all across the Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Sometimes, and this is mostly once in a while, we will have someone that calls because they were referred by, a friend or someone else. And then it goes the same way. We will talk to them and we will provide them our services. A lot of the times, and this is very important, many people don't know, is that if you don't feel safe going to a domestic violence agency, the hospital is a safe place because you can say, I'm going for a checkup, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to the doctor, and then there's an office inside the hospital that is there just to help you with any issues that you may have referring domestic abuse. So most of the times, like I said, we receive referrals from the staff, but it's open to the public. So I welcome anybody who's watching this program to come to Northwestern Hospital and they can ask about the HCIP or CAWC office at Northwestern Hospital, and we will be more than likely to help you, and we would love to help you there. It's just that not many people are aware of the program there.
Right, exactly, because unlike the shelter, we are available 24/7, so we are always on a crisis line or assisting families around the clock. So I can imagine why not many people actually are not aware of services that are only available, let's say like 9 to 5 or like 8 to 4, because it's only like a certain time of the day that they can have access.
Right.
So it's really, really good to know that you are educating more people about that program. And to just tell you a little bit more about Greenhouse Shelter, we are the oldest domestic violence safe home for families and children fleeing violence in the city. And like I previously mentioned, we do operate 24/7. We also have a crisis line that you can contact us on. Here is the information for anyone who's looking for help, who is looking to just understand a little bit more about domestic violence, and also what you or just understand your situation better for your friend, for your family member, or for yourself. We're always open. So Atsi, just this is how did you get involved with the agency? You know, what made you select domestic violence?
Right. So I feel like, you know, a lot of us when we're in college and we're deciding what to do, we go with whatever we're passionate about. And I think that I was always passionate about empowering women and just being an advocate for women and educating people about domestic violence. I think that was something that was always very close to my heart. And then doing research, like you said, I found out more about CAWC, which is Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. And I was just very interested because I found out that it was the first agency to open a shelter in Chicago, and it was also the first agency to start a program in a hospital. So we do trainings all to different hospitals that are trying to start like a program for domestic violence in their hospital. I was just very interested, and I thought if I was going to start somewhere, the agency who started everything would be a good place to begin with.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a great place to get experience from, especially from all the different programs that we have.
Right.
And you have done a lot of work within the agency. You have experience in working at the shelter and at the hospital. Do you see a difference in both these places personally?
Yeah.
And what would be some of your experiences?
Right.
You know?
So, working at the shelter, I think the counselors that work there do a great job because we have to wear many hats, right? So we're working with the people that we're living with, kind of, right? I understand that we work our shift and then we leave the shelter. But a lot of times, I think it's very important to set boundaries or more specific boundaries with the people living at the shelter, with the clients, because they see you every day, right? You're the person that can be their advocate. You're there helping them in any way they can. Sometimes you're working with them very closely, and it just might be better to set boundaries since the beginning, you know? Because again, we become either someone that is very close to them, or they might be tired of us because they see us on a daily, just like you get tired of living with your siblings. It's the same thing. So working at the hospital, it's very different because it's a lot more, we receive a call from a social worker, and then the social worker talks to us, and we don't have that contact with the client until we pass a few hoops, right? Whereas the shelter is like, I need to talk to my client, and I'll just go and that's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is really interesting how, just how differently, but how similar and how different it all is at the same time.
Well, and all the services are the same, and the services are set up to help clients in different positions, right? So I've sent clients from the hospital to the shelter because I know that there is a place that can help them, and they receive the same counseling, and they receive the same services.
Right.
So
are you able to also do groups or anything like that at the hospital? No,
so
right?
that's
so it's just more one-on-one.
Yeah, it's a lot more one-on-one. You do groups?
Yes, so we have a lot of groups. It's just also in a way to kind of keep the families engaged. They're constantly there. So it in a way gives us a lot of access to them in educating them, providing interventions, providing healing groups, especially for them, because you really get to see up close as to how abuse can really affect people.
Right.
And so in that way, it's it's really, what do I say, it's one-on-one services, but you get to do a lot with them.
And I think what's really
families.
nice about the groups is that they get to see that other people have experienced the same things that they've gone through, even if the situation was different or if they come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever it is. Abuse is abuse, right? And anybody can experience it, and I think it's healing to a person to know that there are other people going through the same situation and they're in different, steps in the process.
Right.
And so I think that can be very helpful for a client to open up and really share their experiences with other people that understand where they're coming from.
Yes, absolutely. And we have a lot of it's always the case where they're like nervous in the beginning, very unsure of what to expect from a group.
Right.
Because a lot of them are vulnerable, a lot of them are, closed off. They're not very trusting. So to create that healing, trusting bond between the women and the counselors is a very, special relationship, or like a very special thing that takes place. So that's really wonderful. And just one more question that I have for you.
Yeah.
Do you also work with children, or is it just mostly like adult women?
So our office is located in the Prentice Women's Hospital building. So we're in the specifically located in the building for women, and again, we help anybody at the hospital. But in the clients that I have are mostly older women or women, teenagers. We don't have a lot of children that come for us, so that would be one of the main differences that I've seen from working at the shelter, where the shelter is probably 75% are children and it's just 15% adults. So how is it for you working with children? I know that you're really good at working with children.
We try. We all get, it's like they say, right? Like
Yeah.
the experience really teaches you a lot, and you see, like, at least for me, it definitely that was the case. We work closely with children. A lot of the kids you notice are like adults themselves because of the impacts of the abuse from a very early stage. So working with them is always very joyful because the kids in them really come out, it really shines through, and a lot of kids surprisingly are very open. And are very eager and willing to have that adult support that they really, really lack. Or, just have not had the exposure to. So, when we work with kids, it's we do a lot of fun stuff. Like it could be from board games to just to art therapy, to even just simply sitting and talking, because a lot of kids just like that attention, like to like the feeling of wanting to be liked or wanting to be wanted. So we create that space for them to just be themselves. We get out toys. Sometimes we have movies. So
we listen to.
And once they ease down, they realize it's a safe place for them, and they're able to, I guess, deal with it a lot better and really create that what do I say, that that bond, that bond and that trust that they deeply yearn for.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and that's what made me think, because I feel like a lot more children need to be educated on what violence is, because they're also at that point where they're really confused. They may or may not know what's going on. So and a lot of kids are blaming themselves, especially when a parent is behaves a certain way towards them that doesn't feel very right. So to be there and kind of show them, advocate it. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a really good point that you bring up. I don't think that a lot of people are aware that domestic violence encompasses a lot of things. It's not just physical abuse or emotional abuse, right? And education is very important. Like for kids, kids can learn from an early age what domestic abuse is, what domestic violence is, what all of that looks like, so they can help, or even so they know what they're going through or what's happening and what's good for them and what's not. That's something that they would be looking for. And I think even at the hospital with women, I don't think many women are aware of what domestic violence is.
So do you want to actually talk about what domestic violence is? Because that really touched a very important subject. Not many people actually know the meaning of it or what it can be. So we can talk a little bit more about that. Just what your
what I
thoughts
think.
on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there is not one set definition, but we would what we always like to say, or we like to share with you all, is that domestic violence is about power and control. So a partner will decide or will want to have all the power and control in a relationship, right? One thing that I want to make clear is that abuse is a learned behavior. Is not something that, you know, they say like, oh, he's sick, or an excuse. There is no excuse. Abuse is a learned behavior, right? So they can learn abuse from anybody. Their family members, the society that we live in, that excuse a lot of times abuse, mostly abuse against women. I'm not saying that men are not abused, but as we can see in this society, women are the ones that experience most of the abuse, right? So also is when a partner decides that their needs are on top of the other person in the relationship, right? They don't want to communicate, or they are not trying to find a middle ground. It's like, this is what I want all the control, and you just need to do what I'm telling you.
Exactly.
Abuse can look very different. It's portrayed in many ways. So like I said before, yes, it can be physical, you know, it can be emotional, but it can also be isolating you from your friends, from your family, telling you what you can do and what you can't do. Again, it's about power and control.
Yeah.
So you're only going to do what I tell you, or any tactic that they can use that will maintain you, you know, in control, technically. So financially taking advantage of you, or being in control of the accounts, having joint accounts, and they tell you what you can buy, what you can't do. Their abuse looks very different, and it won't always be something that is like, oh, that person is going through abuse, right? So this is why we do this programs, and why I thank you that you're doing it, because a lot of people are not educated about it, and we want to help you answer any questions that you may have.
Exactly. And it's literally what Ati just mentioned. It's mostly about power and control, and sometimes not many people even know that they're going through it, and a lot of the times, because of how society has conditioned us, we give excuses for our partners. And the minute a lot of people start to do that, well, you can take a step back and just really try to think it over, and just know what you deserve, and kind of educate yourself, you know, if that's what you truly deserve, because, you know, love doesn't hurt, and it never should, and it should never make you question the person that you are with either, to say it in short. And vulnerable communities get affected by it a lot, which can be children, women, and the elderly, disabled people, unfortunately, are all victims of a lot of abuse. And we're here to help. And any calls that you may have, you could always, I can show you our contact information again. You can always contact us on the 24-hour crisis line and the administrative office number, where you will have access to groups, individual counseling, the same thing that we provided at the shelter, but only thing the shelter is 24/7. So yes, you would always be.
We also have legal advocates.
Yes.
So I
Absolutely,
want to put something out there, right? That abuse can be, happen anytime and at any point in your life, like you said, to elderly and many vulnerable people out there that might be experiencing abuse. And there are orders of protection which we can help you obtain. We have legal advocates in our main office in Humboldt Park, and they are more than equipped to help anybody get an order of protection, right? And I think one of the misconceptions that some people might have is that an order of protection is the same thing as a restriction order, and that's not necessarily true, right? An order of protection can just mean that a judge says you are not allowed to hit this person, and you cannot come close to them, or you can set different boundaries between the abuser and the survivor, right? Because a lot of our survivors are in different stages in the process. So some survivors might want to stay in the relationship, and others might want to leave. But for those who still want to work things out, or who are not ready to leave just yet, they can always just get an order protection just to back them up.
And it does give that temporary relief of the abused. So that is definitely a resource to make the most out of, especially when you're in immediate danger, you or your child, or anyone that you know. And it's helpful. And yes, and we do find, like Katsi even mentioned earlier, like a lot of people having very limited resources due to the abuse that that's occurred to them. And to be trapped legally is unfortunately a growing epidemic among communities that are dependent on their partners. And so we do provide legal advocacy as well. So please, if you have any questions on just what your legal rights, as simple as that, like what you can and cannot do based on your situation, and if you can know that can be helpful.
Right.
Yeah. So that is like kind of like an overview of what our program does. If you have any questions, we are ready to take any calls that may come right now. So I'm just gonna wait. Oh, okay, so there are no calls. Well, so in that case, we can talk a little bit about our other programs that is offered at CAWC. We've been advocates there for a while right now, and we've touched on the HCIP program, and we do have the HBOP program. Would you like to say a little bit more about the other programs that we offer as well?
Yeah, so we have some satellite programs. Our main office is in Humboldt Park, as Baishu has shown previously. We also have the shelter, and we have some satellite programs at HCIP, which are at the hospital, at Stroger and Northwestern Memorial. We have counselor advocates there as well. And we also have another program which focus on working with adults that are going through domestic violence and are struggling through addiction, right? So we're trying to cover as much ground as we can possibly take, right? Domestic violence affects anybody and everyone. We just are trying to be as present as we can so we can educate people about it and maybe expand, and maybe at one point everyone will know about it.
And Atsi, do you think there are any kind of trainings or people can actually obtain to get involved in domestic violence? Because I feel like we all have an opportunity to get involved and to make a difference. Atsi here will tell us a little bit more about what you can do if you are interested in making a difference and making a contribution.
Right. So we actually educate doctors and staff, right? But I know that there are many trainings across the city of Chicago for anybody who wants to learn about domestic violence. And not only trainings, if you're not a person that is out there looking for trainings, or it might be difficult for you to travel, there are a lot of resources that you can find online, right? If you just simply look for domestic violence hotline, you can find a lot of information about toxic relationships, what abuse is, what type of resources you can find. With a simple Google search, there are a lot of things that you can find, right?
Exactly. And one of the more significant trainings is called the 40-hour training, which does make you a domestic violence professional. At the end of it, it kind of educates you on what domestic violence is and how to work with survivors and victims. So for anyone who's looking to get started, you can contact the number given below and speak to our volunteer coordinator, Megan Rosado, for more information based on that. And I'm going to wait a little bit more time to see if we have a call. If not, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Baishu, and this is Atsi.
Thank you.
Thank you.